Musa Dankwa, certainly. What do they seem to be telling us with the numbers that are being recorded or have been recorded?
It tells me that we've always been speaking the voice of Ghanaians, and that what we are seeing is a reflection of what we were told by voters for years. If you look at our polling cycles, started in January 2022, and we've been accused of always portraying somebody as the winner. It is not for us to portray anybody. We just report what we are told. And I think if you look at what we're going to get in the end, the results will not be far from what we recorded in April 2022. Absolutely no difference.
Okay. And you've been doing this work over the last 2 years. By January 2024, you started doing this projection that this is what you were picking up. Based on what indicators that you were interacting with the sample size that you picked, that they were telling you? On what benchmarks were they saying that he should be leading the pack?
Look, if you look at what people were telling us, first they were saying that the country is headed in the wrong direction, in the upper range of 60 to 65% every quarter. Then they tell you that their standard of living is getting worse. Then they say they don't think it's going to improve in the next 12 months. Then when you ask them, what are the top 3 things that bother you today that would influence how you vote? It's been economy, number 1. Number 2, jobs. Number 3, education. And this has been consistent for the past 3 years. So once economy is a central theme of this campaign, or the big issue, the governing party is unlikely to win because the economy is dominant and every other factor becomes secondary. That's why you couldn't see roads as a key point, top 3. You couldn't see corruption because people are hungry. And that the sole reason why MPP lost largely was because of the economy.
So bread and butter issues have become critical. In that January poll, you do the transition, they seem to reflect what we are getting now, the 54 to 56% trend for John Dramani Mahama. And that was a reflection same in January.
Yes.
Why is that?
Because nothing has changed. You see, if you look at the polling numbers way back in 2022, I think November, December, you know, the city collapsed around July.
Yes, started collapsing around July. From April, May, by July.
But it made a speed recovery between December and January. When you look at that data, you would see that the performance of the government also improved around that time. So their fate was tied to the economy and the economy. Once there was no improvement in the economy, your fate is sealed. Period.
But why did Dr. Bawumia have to suffer for the sins of Nana Akufo-Addo?
He is the head of the EMT, the economic management team. And Ghanaians don't take any excuse that you are not in charge. And if he wasn't in charge, I think he should have spoken. He should have shown that he's not happy with what is going on.
But elements within his camp had come out to say that he was not fully in charge.
That's not good enough. Look, if you look at Kenya's scenario, Uhuru, Kenyatta, and William Ruto, there was open fight between them. They disagreed.
Publicly.
So the public knew that Ruto was not in agreement with Kenyatta. So when Ruto split his camp, people believed him.
You mean it was going to be very difficult for Ghanaians to believe that Dr. Bawumia and all the proposals that he made to the government at the time he did were not heeded to?
Yeah. And you see, there were elements in the government, and I'll mention names. Ken Uvurata was the problem Bawumia had in the EMT.
Really?
It's an open secret. And I believe if Ken had gone earlier,
something could have been salvaged.
Absolutely.
Okay, but around that time, where the CD started plummeting in 2022, by October, the anticipation was that if the finance minister read the budget, everything will be fine. Just a month or two before, many of the market instruments in the market were then pegged to market value. It also means that the middle class lost a chunk of their investment for over 2 decades and a half, meaning that if you also relate it to the US dollar, it was nothing to speak about. If you look at that scenario, that voter population, that population of our country, and the people who turned up, the average turn-up of 50%, 51% across the constituencies, meaning less young people, more of the outliers, the middle-aged people coming in. What did it tell you about what their thoughts were on who they wanted to lead them and to revive the economy and the country?
You know, if you ask people what are the key issues, and they say education, jobs, whatever they tell you, you can also look at those who say jobs. Who do they prefer to lead the country? And on that score, Mahama has always performed better than Bawumia. When you bring economy as an issue, then he even gets better against Bawumia. Because they believe that Bawumia hasn't shown that he can deal with the economy.
But he was touted to be the economic messiah, so to speak. Even Dankwa on a campaign platform said he was the man chosen to deal with all things variables and the objectives of growth of Ghana's economy.
We are here today. We know what has happened. So on the issue of trust, who do you trust? In fact, consistently, we've been asking voters, who do you trust to better manage the economy? It's always been John Mahama. In fact, in the last poll we did, we asked them, who do you believe has the competence, the experience, and the track record to manage this economic crisis? Overwhelmingly, it's been Mahama. So there was no doubt that Mahama was the preferred choice of people who are worried about the economy today. And for that matter, I mean, nobody should be surprised that he's the president-elect.
But Roland, you know, I'm quite surprised how the NPP may have missed this, because we know, based on historical data, that ever since Bawumia was, you know, ushered into the political scene in 2008, he's consistently increased the numbers of the NPP in the 3 regions of the north. We've seen his performance in the Upper East region. It doesn't look like it shaped up in this election.
No.
John Mahama swept the northern regions.
Why?
See, the economy had superseded any
other consideration?
Absolutely. Look, people who were intended to vote by religion, ethnicity, and they were completely overwhelmed by the economy. And those things became secondary issue and went entirely based on their pocket.
But is it not magical? It almost seemed like a 3-line whip. You know, when we're in parliament, you have the minority whippers or majority whippers, you know, calling the guys together and say, listen, you guys have got to do this in a certain way. Across the country, there was a particular trend that was going. You didn't see much of skirt and blouse. And let me come to this. I mean, you earlier mentioned Ken Oforiatta and his possible, you know, involvement or contribution, that's a word, to this defeat. I'd like to read to you what Eugene Boachi Entry, who's a former MP for Subin, he's actually the current MP. Member, yeah, but he lost the primaries. He said, as at last night, that we lost this general election in the last quarter of 2020. Deserve their vote in 2024. They have therefore punished us severely and taught the NPP a bitter lesson. Almost a third of registered voters, nearly 6 million voters, did not visit their polling stations to vote due to apathy. How do you respond to this?
I think he is right. Even when you listen to the community of investors, you know,
the investor community,
yes, they were looking for Ken to be sacked. Wow. If he had been sacked, the sentiment would have gone up. There would have been confidence built back. And even leading the IMF was very difficult with somebody who was completely opposed the IMF bailout. And now he's in charge of the IMF deal.
And consistently, when you recall, people like Kwame Pienim, respected economists, had called on the president to fire the finance minister.
Joe Jackson, a number of them as well. Okay, so Musa, are you saying if Ken Ofori-Atta was booted out earlier, the results would not have been worse, as we see it, astronomical? You're looking projectively 187 seats for the NDC in Parliament, or you're saying that, well, if he was booted out earlier, the MPP would have retained the presidency?
See, if he had gone earlier, and I think people will accept that since Anta took over the Ministry of Finance, we've seen a kind of stability in the economy. We've seen some sort of confidence in the economy. That would have felt into the public sentiment about what we call, do you believe that things will improve in the next 12 months? That question would have been improving. But there's a link between the people's feeling in the economy and the polling numbers. You can't detect the two. If they were hopeful, they would have been second guessing. Maybe let's try Bawumia. Maybe let's try him.
You're not sure?
You're not sure.
No, but you are not sure.
No, God didn't ask them the question.
So the question I ask you directly is this. Projectively, 185 to 187 seats. This has a voter differential of 1.5 million, again projectively. So the question is direct. Are you saying that if Ken Ofori-Atta was sacked earlier, was booted out earlier, there would have been defeat but marginal, or they would have retained the seat?
No, it will be defeat by marginal.
Great.
Much more respectful defeat.
I see.
Yes.
Why is that?
Not this lopsided landslide effectively.
Lopsided?
Of course. Landslide, because you see, no ruling government or sitting government has lost this way before. And that is very significant. And the consequences of this could be dire, because with the weaker parliamentary numbers, you have no voice in parliament.
Almost like a rubber stamp?
Rubber stamp.
Yeah.
We're looking back to like the 1996 government Rawlings type of administration. So
complete shake-up.
It weakens the party in parliament. And once you're not in government, it is the parliamentary caucus that keep your voice out there.
What's the difference between them? At the time, we said it was massive, nearly 1 million differential. 2016, Nana Dankwa Kufuado, Dr. Bawumia, and this time around, in terms of the reasons or the sentiments why they saw that win, and then today.
If you look, I think about 6 months ago, I said that if Kyei is not taken, MPP could lose with 2 million votes. And people were laughing at me.
Wow.
We did the maps.
Yeah, I think I remember
yes.
that. Yeah.
I said, if they don't take care, they could lose with that million side of vote. Now, if you look at what happened in 2016, people were fed up with the doomsday, even though it had theoretically been addressed, because it had impact on their pocket.
On their businesses.
On their businesses. So the economy was the center stage as well. Then you have the add-on free education. And then people thought, look, this is something marvelous. I mean, so that wind of change blew out NDC, gave them the nearly 1 million vote. If you compare that anger to what it is today, we are on a different level of frustration and anger.
Wow.
And what you saw is clear reflection of people's
You're saying
impatience.
the anger today among the voter population is due to hunger?
Yes.
I see. Quite interesting.